And here we are. Welcome back to the PT Graduate Podcast. My guest today, Greg Mawson. Grego, how are you?
Hey, good. Thanks, Rich.
Good.
Thanks for having me on the show, mate.
Excellent. Hey, good to connect. Nice to be able to see you while I'm still in level 4, and I know you have a little bit more freedom. So yes, it's great to be able to see more of the outside world than I normally am day to day. That's for sure.
Yeah,
So your business, Get It Sorted Health, and you're based in Napier. I'll just rattle off what I've got here, Greg, and we can get into it. So you actually started life in IT, is that right?
Yeah. I spent 16 years in IT.
Yeah. Okay. Saw a really interesting photograph of you on your website, which is very vulnerable of you. And I suspect that was when you kind of made the decision to get a little bit healthier and change your body. And obviously you did some massage and then you got into PT. It'd be interesting to hear your journey a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I originally, when I left school, I was a chef. So, there's the old adage, you don't trust a skinny chef. And I know in our industry we don't tend to use the word skinny, but back then it was relative. And yeah, I guess that in itself kind of ballooned me out a little bit. And oftentimes when we look back, we think there was an emotional link or some trigger that enabled me to sort of head down that path. And of course, it was the old story of there was someone that was close to me that kind of didn't realize they were giving me a bit of grief. And of course, I became what I thought I was, which was a heavy boy.
Yeah.
Of course, moving into a desk job didn't help a lot. But then, I guess I moved into the sort of bodybuilding arena, and there was simply a mate that was 50, and he went and did a bodybuilding competition. And I thought, if you can do it, you old bugger, that's me. And then, I guess, 10 years down the track, a couple of records and stuff, and it was pretty cool. A couple of medals.
Yeah, I see that. I'll get into that. So you did the massage thing first, or did you combine massage and PT?
So the massage was actually how that worked was, the old grab one and so forth. There was a deal down in Wellington. I was living down there at the time. Did a little stint down there for just under a year. Moved for a bit of a career path because in IT, there wasn't that many jobs around Napier at that point.
Yeah.
I was in my bodybuilding career at that stage. I'd been in it about 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
And I did want to move into personal training. And it was literally a really good deal on massage. And I thought, hey, I can utilize that skill anyway, even if I move into that. And that kind of was the push into it, because I couldn't commit full time to any sort of personal training study at that point. I was quite well cemented and earning not a bad whack doing IT. And of course, when you move to PT and you start to do that sort of stuff, initially it's quite hard.
Yeah.
And I guess some of your viewers and people hearing this on the podcast will appreciate that if they've just started out or if they've had a bit of a journey. It's real hard. And one thing I've never been great on was anatomy, and it sort of enabled me to learn a little bit more about anatomy. And it was as a tool I could pretty much use straight away. So that's why I headed down that route. And I guess about 6 to 12 months later, I was studying to be a PT.
Superb, awesome. And so you were doing your bodybuilding at the same time. You'd set up your PT business. I guess it'd be interesting to know how you navigated that transition, because you just alluded to it then in terms of that shifting from a reliable income into being a business owner and being a PT, which has a variable income. Any tips, anything that you sort of thought, that was a good thing I did, as opposed to I wouldn't do that again? So did that?
I guess well, everyone's different in that regard, Rich. See, I had the bodybuilding side of things, and admittedly, when I did my training, I did actually do that training in Australia. I looked around a little bit, and back then, I simply made the call to say, hey, do I want to do my study online in New Zealand? Being in Napier, we're pretty limited for places to go. You've got your EIT, of course, but they normally want you to head down the sort of the diploma and sort of bachelor route. And I thought, I want to get started. I want to become PT. So I thought, hey, why not be on the Gold Coast and do it? So that's where I got my training done. But certainly from what I've learned, you know, even just doing the initial training, it's about the study you do after that training. But getting back to the question, because I had the bodybuilding, I kind of felt that I could try and utilize some of that to be saying, this is my point of difference. But admittedly, and why I mentioned the training on the Gold Coast, it didn't matter if I won international bodybuilding competitions, because in the Gold Coast, you could head into a gym and there could be 10 ex-Mr. Australias in that gym at any one time, you know, that you literally swallowed up into a big city vibe, when coming from little old Napier with, you know, 65,000 people, you sort of, you just realize that it's quite humbling. Admittedly, I didn't get too egoish or egotistical with my bodybuilding, because I remembered my roots and the fact that I had actually come from those humble beginnings of being a big boy. And I guess part of the reason I headed down that route too was I had heaps of people asking me, you know, how did you lose weight, Greg? You know, what did you do? And it's quite interesting. I don't know why. Back then I thought, hey, look, I don't have the qualification to be able to tell you. And I look back and think that's quite a mature aspect of what I did, thinking I want to get qualified to be able to say what I want, you know, to be able to do the do, rather than just go, oh yeah, I'm a bodybuilder, this is what worked for me. And that was actually my way of getting out of it too. Say, listen, I've spent a lot of time self-experimenting on me. I don't really know other people yet. So and I guess sort of starting out, if I was to do anything different, probably not. Once I learned pretty smartly that people weren't necessarily interested in bodybuilding, I just literally stopped marketing that aspect. Because it was just good to sit in the background where people go, hey, this guy knows how to get in shape. But certainly if I were to look at my client base and say how many of those people actually want to be bodybuilders, even back then when I was fully immersed in it, I'd have to say, probably 2 to sort of, you know, maybe 10%, 20% of my clients. So, you know, and hey, don't get me wrong, I do think it's important to find a niche. But the one thing you learn is dealing with bodybuilders. If any of you out there have either done the journey or know someone that's done the journey, there are a whole bunch of people with a few issues. I can tell you. So, you know, did I want to narrow myself down into that scope? Probably not.
No, it does narrow your market. I guess you go narrow, but hopefully you go deep, right? Whereas you know the general population are just looking for a bit of an improvement in composition and better health markers, those sorts of things.
And certainly when I started, Rich, I wanted to heal the world like most trainers. You know, if you're kinesthetic like I am, auditory, you love to listen to people's journey and story, you really want to help them. You know, people that are bodybuilders have kind of done that thing that they kind of want more of the other aspect, the dieting and stuff, and that's not necessarily a hands-on thing. So
fair enough. So if I'm correct in saying you actually competed in 53 competitions. That's a significant number.
I mean, there's a few other bodybuilders around. I mean, there's a local guy, Andrew Murray, who's he's done some phenomenal. He's probably lost count. You know, and initially I first started doing my journey with him, which was great. But yeah, certainly in the scheme of things, 53 over the span of 10 years. In 1 year I did 10.
10 in 1 year. Wow.
So
you'd have been staying.
It was quite hard. I got a little bit sick near the end there, just from putting my body through that. But admittedly, I've never done anything dodgy, so I've never taken an each to their own on that, you know. But I've always been a natural bodybuilder. But admittedly, you know, when you're dehydrating using diuretics, herbal diuretics, it's still not necessarily that good for you. But at the time, I used to defend my position and say, look, at the end of the day, there's no difference for me spending a week kind of tricking my body into dehydration than sitting on the couch drinking a box of piss. So. But you know, when you're carrying a lower percent of body fat, and you know you're in your best shape of your life in winter, you know, used to get down under 3% body fat, around 3%, and literally around that 4% mark, your bones feel like metal bars inside your body. You get quite cold. Of course, your metabolism shutting down and all that sort of carry on. So you're very cold. So you're susceptible to getting sick.
That sounds tough. I guess it's a chosen few that are prepared to take their bodies into that place to, you know, for the accolades. I mean, obviously it's some serious work involved.
Yeah, I guess admittedly there's the few sort of jokes around, you know, you're doing all this work for a plastic trophy, and that was the reality. And I guess what it came down to was it was something that I could control,
Right.
something that I needed to put the time and effort into.
Yeah.
You know, and even through, you know, because I started in 2006, you know, you had the GFC in 2008. There's a huge upswing of people going to the gym because they thought the same, hey, I might have lost some money or life might not be the best at the moment, but at least I can sort of move into the health and fitness stuff and get myself sorted. It's something that I can control.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of trying to rehabilitate myself out of there when I retired in 2017 to then, of course, be a normal guy.
Yeah. And in 2017 was when you won the Mr. Universe Classic physique.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Totally unexpected. There was 8 countries represented at that competition, and in my class there was about 8 or 9 athletes, and I think there was 3 nationalities. There was Malaysian, he came third. There was an Indian guy as well. So it was in Auckland. I thought, why not?
Yeah.
I'd actually said to my wife that I'd retire the competition before.
Right.
And then I was like, oh no, I can't retire now. And then of course I won that, and then I'm like, oh, I can't retire now. I have to go to the Olympia in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So
you got out to Las Vegas a couple of times, is that right?
2015. Trying to feel my way and knowing what class I wanted to be in, because there was a couple of new classes I was playing around with. And it's one thing to be a bodybuilder on the national stage, but when you go overseas, like I can be a big guy, but over there, even in a natural competition, just tiny.
Really?
So I 2015, I headed over there and did board shorts.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I don't have the body for board shorts. My abs are slightly different to what they're after in that class.
Okay.
But I carried good size in that class. But if I were to reflect, I really regret not doing bodybuilding as well, because I would have been quite competitive.
Yeah.
And of course, come 2017, and I came 5th in the world out of about 13 athletes on the Olympia stage. And they kept me out the whole time, and they kept me near the center the whole time. And I talked to one of the judges, and they said that they were using me as a conditioning kind of. They were balancing people with size and condition against me, because I wasn't carrying much size. I've never been a big bodybuilder, but I could get a pretty good nick.
Okay.
So and I did my pro debut there.
Yeah.
And I got annihilated. I got 5th out of 6. But that's all right. That's all right.
Good experience. Good experience. I guess a lot of that has given you so much information, so many tools. Like you said, you've worked on yourself, but how do you then translate that into helping other people?
That's a good question. What I normally tell people is set yourself out on a journey that's sustainable. And certainly one thing that I learned from retirement in 2017, that what I was doing wasn't necessarily sustainable. I did learn some tricks along the way. And I guess from that point, I know how to stay lean when I'm already lean. And I know everyone knows how to get bigger in the wrong way. But I guess what I've learned is just offering that advice to people, saying, hey, we can get you lean. And, you know, I guess it comes down to you know, diet. And, you know, one of the biggest questions we get asked as professionals is, what's the best diet? And of course, my answer is one that's sustainable for you.
Yeah.
You know, jump on keto if you feel like you can spend the rest of your life doing that, by all means. Otherwise, what are you actually learning? And I guess in that standpoint, could I have protein pancakes twice a day and just carry on living life like that? And, you know, it wasn't necessarily for me. So yes, I am a little bit bigger than I used to be, but to be fair, my wife likes me better like this. And
that's important.
So I guess it's always one of those catch-22s. So just the sustainability factor, and yes, I can help people get lean, but it's about you know, making sure that we do it in a sustainable way. But again, I've actually sort of moved away from that, Rich, and of course jumping on the mentorship with Dave Leo. that was sort of moving more into helping people with their movement and stuff like that, which is totally different to your traditional bodybuilding style. And that's aided me in moving toward more of a powerlifting strength type trainer.
Okay.
So I have more clients now that are powerlifters and working with their strength than I did with even when I was doing bodybuilding.
Okay.
With bodybuilders, yeah.
Right. Because I guess if they can't get down, can't get into the position, then you can use all the movement stuff to help them get into the right position.
100%. And certainly, I guess that's when we look at point of difference, going back to that. There are a lot of powerlifting coaches out there, and, you know, some of them are amazing and they're amazing powerlifters. I guess my point of difference is being able to know what tricks and tools to be able to use to, like you said, get them into position properly. But, you know, always learning more all the time, you know, and I look at myself, you know, if we go back to when I first started, you could say I was a cookie cutter PT, because at the end of the day, that's all you know.
Yeah.
And if it was to give one word of advice, it's never stop learning, be a student for life.
Yeah. Great
know?
advice. Yeah. You use the, you're talking about helping people get into a good shape and making it sustainable. The Bioscan tool, did you say it was in body?
Yeah, so I've got an in-body. It's a little baby one of the range, the 230. Yeah, and it's the more portable one, because I do a few corporate challenges and stuff with it.
Yeah,
I guess it just makes it a little bit more fairer, because if we look at that angle and think, okay, so corporate challenge, you know, you've got a lot of the time they get called biggest loser and so forth.
Yeah.
And I guess the issue with that, say you got a guy like you, Rich, who's, you know, fit as a fiddle, and they're actually excluded from that competition because you might not necessarily be interested in losing weight.
Yeah, there's nothing to lose.
What we can do is have several classes. So you can have there's an in-body score on the machine. So I guess it's an overall fit health score.
Okay.
And the in-body loves muscle. And if you lose a bit of fat, it loves that too. But it loves muscle from the standpoint that, you know, to get muscle, generally you have to work hard for that.
Yeah.
So of course the score then reflects that. So what you could have is best change in the score. And of course that won't necessarily exclude those people that are on their own journey.
Yes.
And in doing so, what that does is those people are full of knowledge. They're out there doing it. They're motivating. Yeah. So that's where I head. And so you've got these people at work, and, you know, most workplaces have at least one or two people that are, you know, out there cycling every weekend or doing stuff like that. So yeah, it's really important to get those sort of people involved.
Yeah.
And, you know, that carries people forward, and, you know, it's amazing what that does rather than just biggest loser. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a great way of making it very inclusive. When you've got so many different body types and so many different activity levels. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
I like that. And so that's your own machine, is it, that you've invested in?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got that from InBody Australia. I've been doing it for actually probably I'll lay claim to being one of the longest in New Zealand, actually.
Okay.
I'm in my 9th year of PT, so I've been doing that probably around 8.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I had an old 270. I think I said 230 earlier.
You did, yeah.
I had a 230. Yeah. So it's 270 now. Yeah.
270.
And the technology's changed in the way it's still the same accuracy. So that's 98% correlation with a DEXA X-ray scan. And that's a DEXA X-ray 4 scan, by the way, because there's obviously different DEXA X-ray as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into where it sits, because most people know, you know, you've got your hydroplunge pool, which is the standard, and then you've got your and it just comes down to under DEXA. And the reason I upgraded was because it had online capabilities. So, you know, people were always losing the printouts and stuff. And so this has got an online database, which is obviously secure.
Yeah.
And enables people to get reprints if they need it. And of course, there's an online app for them to use on their mobile phone as well. And it makes my life judging competitions a lot easier as well, because you can literally say, right, fitness score or in-body score, male, female, or best muscle gain, male, female. So you can actually, it's Māori language. I should be saying wahine atane. Should enable you to, just get those results a lot quicker, just like that, off the online database. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And of course, from an individual perspective, it's just monitoring what your goals are. At the end of the day, even an endurance athlete, you know, let's make sure that endurance athlete isn't actually burning muscle when we're out there. they're eating enough and keeping an eye on things like that. Yeah, so it's an
Mm-hmm.
amazing tool, and it enabled me to rehabilitate myself from bodybuilding back into some form of normal life.
Nice.
Because I could understand I could go and have a coffee and cake and not get fat.
Excellent. Sustainable.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. You've talked about the fact that you're more holistic now, and your typical client is, well, 80% of your clients, have a more balanced approach. They're not wanting to be bodybuilders. Any other sort of goals that your clients have that are they fairly general population, or are there any other specifics or things that of interest?
Yeah, I mean, I've moved from being a contract PT at a big box franchise gym to going to a home-based studio, which was a huge leap for me. And I'm normally quite stuck in my ways. And that was, I had talked to a few people in high places and got a bit of advice, and basically just said, look, just go for it.
Yeah.
End of the day. And it's paid dividends through the lockdowns and stuff, because I've got a bit of equipment out there now.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was huge leap. So I guess it has changed a little bit. I do miss the foot traffic. I do miss, having people that aren't necessarily clients that just say hello to in a gym environment.
Yeah.
But it's probably more aimed at, now I've moved into a sort of a more business owner type niche.
Yeah.
Where, they have the flexibility to be able to come and see me during the day. It's enabled me to tailor my business to me.
Yeah.
But, again, I've still got that attitude. I want to help everyone, but it's about what I tend to do nowadays is I work them around my time rather than the other way around. Yeah. And of course, at the start, you just get as many clients as you can, because that's just what you need to do. But then, gradually build it into, them working around my time. And of course, I've got a young family. I've got a 5 and a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So and my wife's a bit younger than me.
Yeah.
So I've got to keep on my toes.
Absolutely. Good stuff. What are the lessons or valuable experiences that you've had from being in the gym environment before you shifted to your current setup? What was good about that that's people might appreciate?
Oh, look, you've got access to, generally speaking, I guess it really depends on who you're with. But you've generally got access to a massive database of people. You can pretty much, you're not really cold calling if that's your thing, because they're obviously warm leads because they're actually at the gym. And of course, if they're not at the gym, then you can say, hey, you've got this membership. Why aren't you at the gym? And it's a good opportunity to do that. I don't tend to offer a lot of free stuff anymore, but I think that there's definitely some power in try before you buy. People do want to know, when you're starting out, what you're about and what you can do for them.
Yeah.
There's that perception of, what can you do that I can't, that I can do myself, and certainly moving into the holistic realm. And running with some base assessments. I mean, that stuff's just absolute magic.
Yeah.
So that happened from the upskilling and the extra study that I did.
Yeah.
But just from the contractor perspective, you see a lot more people. You've also got the competition of other PTs there as well, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because you that makes you sort of create your own niche.
Yeah.
But it also allows you to sort of get a bit of you can see one of your colleagues doing something, you go, hey, that's pretty cool, and have a chat with them. The environment that I like to say I created it, because by the time I left, I was the longest serving member at that gym. And I was never in the space of kind of being, I think at the start I was kind of a little bit, but sort of, but that was my own insecurities. But certainly with the team environment we built, it was like, hey, have a conversation with it. What did you do there, and you're upskilling all the time. But one thing with Hawke's Bay is it's a little bit, being the PT Council ambassador for Hawke's Bay, people tend to be a little bit sort of guarded, like it's their big secret. And of course, there's not enough of us in the world to help everyone. So as far as I'm concerned, I love to be able to help other people. And in doing so, learn from them as well. And that's what I think the biggest thing was. Don't be afraid of your colleagues at the gym. Try and get on their side, good side. And certainly it enabled me to say, hey, you know what, this client that I've got, they're just not a right fit. She's more after your style of training. And there's some really, really powerful stuff. If you can't help a client, you should have the opportunity to be able to then offer them someone else, or try and work with someone else.
Absolutely.
Because you know, that just shows professionalism, because
Totally.
let's face it, not everyone's compatible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly on that route would be sort of, you know, aligning yourself with professionals outside that gym to be able to say, hey, you know, we had a unique situation there. We had a kind of a back to work physio that weren't open to the public, so they were aligned with ACC directly. So they kind of did a lot of that stuff. So we kind of had a bit of conflict if we were to align ourselves with other allied professionals out and about.
Yeah.
But it's certainly nice to align yourself with, say, services that aren't offered in your gym, like massage therapists and stuff. And generally speaking, that works in your favour too, because then, of course, they can then come and you can do some sort of contra stuff as well that can help in your favour.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
one thing that we trainers know is we don't tend to look after ourselves as well as we do our clients. So
absolutely, you're so right. Yeah, we come last, don't we, when we think about our health? Unless you take yourself so far, and then you learn the lesson the hard way, and you go, right, I need to make some changes, and now this is what life looks like. But I think making that shift that you talked about, you know, arranging your clients around you, it gives you that ability to have that balance and that control over your hours and your timing, that then enables that you know, to have that ability to look after your health in a better way or a different way.
Yeah. And I guess I sort of, when I was doing the bodybuilding, I was opposite, and I kept having to remind myself, work brings in the money to be able to do the bodybuilding, not the other way around.
Right.
You know, because it does get a little bit self-absorbed and possessive, because you need to do that. You know, you need to be a possessed demon to be able to achieve the results that you want. But certainly, you know, just remember that who pays the bills. Yeah. And like in certain states through that, I was a little bit airheady, and my clients knew what it was up to. But yeah, again, it was. Yeah, I wouldn't say I've lost any clients from that, but I certainly know that there was a few times there where a client sort of said, "Hey, you really need to be at home asleep, mate, because you look like crap," and you know.
So we're not if we're not careful, we're not the health models that we would like to think we are sometimes. You know, working long hours, early starts, late finishes, all those sorts of things catch up on you if you don't find the balance.
No, exactly right.
Now you might not want to talk about this, so feel free to shut me down, but you also fulfill another role, and you talked about you know, helping we want to help the world sort of thing as a counsellor in Hawke's Bay. Is that something that you were shoulder tapped to do?
Yes and no. So yeah, I'm a Napier City councillor as well. So my business sort of moved into a bit of a part-time role when I was elected in 2019.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing, you know, if you're competitive, there's one thing you don't get is a debt.
Yeah.
And essentially what happened, if I was to narrow it down, there was something that really upset me, and that like there was a set of lights that got put up, and they were an absolute nightmare. I felt at the time I did all that I could do to try and get them changed in a different way. But of course, learning what I know now, I'm in a worse position, to be fair, as a counsellor. You can't really, people think you can go and do the nudge, but not really.
No.
Other people can come to me and then I can ask. But yeah, and of course I had a meeting because it was at election time, and that's the best time if you ever want to talk to a counsellor about getting stuff done, because then you know because it's election time, they'll definitely want to come and see you. Of
course.
But most, to be fair, most counsellors are fine. I enjoy meeting people. And I guess one of the incumbents there, he sort of said to me, I asked what it was about and how you run and how you get elected. And he said, well, you should give it a go. I'm like, well, okay then, I will.
Cool.
And I guess, you know, other than my short stint in Wellington, my short stint on the Gold Coast, I've lived in Napier since I was 2. So, you know, I know Napier very, very well. And I guess there's a few people here that know me, and I thankfully haven't annoyed too many people. So it resulted in me coming 4th out of 4 seats, but there were 6 people running for that. And knowing what I know now, that the 2 people that came 1st and 2nd, I mean, it's never really like that, but of course, you know, the votes. I mean, they wholeheartedly deserved it, because they were incumbent. They were there before. They do a lot of work in the community. And had it just been 2 seats, because they had a representation review, so it changed from being two seats to 4. And had those just been 2 seats, I wouldn't have run.
Okay.
Because as I say, like, they're amazing people. And the lady that came 3rd, I mean, she's a rock star as well, you know. And I feel humbled to even be there, let alone be sort of, you know. in with that crew, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like, we went to award system, so I was running in for award seat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds. I mean, obviously there's bureaucracy that comes with that, but it sounds like it could be really quite fulfilling. You know, if you're that kind of person that loves being with people, giving back, would it be such?
There's there's some satisfaction in being able to help people, but one thing that really annoys generally and counsellors in general, not just me, but just the process and the red tape and the amount of stuff that has to go through to get anything done in council, you know, because it's not just a case of saying, oh, you know, can you go and paint these yellow lines because someone's parking silly out the front of my house. There's a huge process about going through all that stuff and that. But most definitely, I mean, it allows me to get what I'm not getting now. I'm not a contractor at the gym. I still catch up with a few people. The only thing is normally it's a case of they're normally quite upset about something and they feel that you're the person that should be able to deal with it. If not, you're the person that is at fault. So, you know, you've only got to jump into a sort of a social media frenzy and see the amount of, I guess, perceptions out there of what council do and what they can and can't do. And if there's one thing that I've learned is again, being the student for life I am, is that, you know, there are a lot of perceptions out there about local government that just aren't true. You know, warming seats, not doing work, in it for the money. I can tell you firsthand that my business went down. I was in triple figures when I was working as a contractor at the gym. Had a couple of subcontractors, and that went down to low 2 digits.
Okay.
And you know, it's 54. It's public knowledge, so I'm happy to share it here. 54K a year I'm on there, and it takes up. It's based on 20 hours, so you think, okay, you double that because it's 40 a week. But to be fair, there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of reading. And being auditory and kinesthetic, I struggle with that sometimes. I would love it in the audio book. So what I have to do is it's enabled me to learn a little bit more about myself and my learning style, and I just read it out to myself basically. And I listen to myself reading it.
Gotcha.
But there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of reading to do.
If somebody had,
everyone expects you to know everything, Rich.
Say again.
Everyone expects you to know everything.
Yeah, that can't be easy because I mean, you know, you'd have different people for different reasons because they've got different areas of knowledge and speciality, right?
And of course, one of the things I ran on was the fact that I wasn't a politician and that I was just a normal guy. And of course, around that sort of 2019 area, there was a huge outcry for people that were just normal people. You know, the bureaucracies, you know, is at a big scale. So that's one of the things I ran with, and I guess it paid dividends because the other two guys I beat to get on the seat, they were great guys. You know, they both had credentials and would have made great councillors.
Right. Yeah, that's good to hear. I guess the reason for asking that is if people had the opportunity to do something else while they were still running their PT business, and I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, working for as a counsellor, it could be anything. But is that sustainable? Is that something that works? Does it work for you in terms of that juggle?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned before, the business has gone down a little bit, and admittedly, that wasn't ideal. However, I guess you kind of get rewarded for helping people if you're true, you know, kinesthetic and auditory and all that sort of carry on. And I guess that's what people see through as customers. You know, if you're all about the money, people will see through that. And generally speaking, in my opinion, that doesn't mean you'll last too long as a trainer. So the balancing act is quite hard. And initially, when we had our induction, it was a massive induction, and it consumed a lot of time. And thankfully, back then, I had my 2 subcontractors. I could try and then provide my clients with the ability to still train. And of course, from that, I did lose some clients, but as a sort of a subcontract, that's not a bad thing because that's obviously where the passive income started kicking in. But again, I still wanted that one-to-one contact, and that sort of did go by the wayside. I guess it just means I've got to concentrate more on my study because I'm legally bound to and obligated to read my papers for council. It does get quite hard to then go, all right, I've got to fit in my other study. But certainly with a different role, say if you've got a part-time role where you're earning money. I mean, who would have thought, 2020 was the year for a supermarket worker to be an essential worker and someone that was extremely important. I mean, do not get me wrong. When I became a chef, I started from the ground up. I was a kitchen hand, so I appreciate the pieces of a pie, the piece that makes everything go. You can't run a kitchen without a kitchen hand. And similarly, people are important, and we need people to do stock shelves and stuff, and they're all important people. But certainly through COVID and stuff, we realized how important they were. And if you've got one of those part-time roles, you're an important person. You can certainly do your study, get qualified, and start to help friends and family that maybe need help. And then from there, try and get that word of mouth happening. And then from there, just start looking at other things. Certainly, I do advise getting a coach. I appreciate, Rich, you do coaching as well, obviously. Get a business coach. Obviously, they cost money, but of course, you pay for expertise, rightfully so. Otherwise, you wouldn't have clients. So certainly remain coachable throughout your journey to becoming a personal trainer. And yes, there's definitely ways to do it. If you've got a passion for helping people and you just want to get out there and do it, hey, believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself and just get it done. You certainly can do it. And I would think that, to be fair, there's probably one of the harder part-time roles to actually engage in, to then want to be a trainer as well. As I mentioned, from the study and stuff, and programming, it does get it quite sort of from a role that was mostly hands-on to a role that's sort of heading back into the sort of the in front of a PC screen type role.
Yeah, certainly is. That's brilliant, Greg. I I liked how you segued beautifully into the final pearls of wisdom at the end there. So on that note, I will bid you farewell. Thanks for your time and have a great afternoon.
Awesome, Richard. See you guys.
Thanks, Greg. See ya.